Hey guys, welcome to Masters of Marketing. This is Ross. Today we're going to bring you a marketer every day. Masters of Marketing isn't Ask Me Anything, so if you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to put them in the Facebook Live chat, the Zoom chat, or wherever you're joining us.
All right, Ross, you got cut off again. So today we have Maya, the author of Invaluable, and she's going to talk about how to design the career of your dreams. And we're just going to jump right into it, Maya. Maya, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this. So as you mentioned, my name is Maya. I've been a marketer for about 15 years now, and I have what I like to call a very fulfilling career. I love what I do, and I've been able to kind of grow throughout the years the way that I wanted to. And I thought I would share my process today because I'm going to be honest, it's not rocket science. It's more about execution and just being very intentional in building the career that you want. Because, I think a lot of people kind of just go with the flow and just take it day by day, but you can actually plan and you can actually design where you want to go next and just, build the career of your dreams. So I figured I can just share a couple of tips to help people actually do that.
That's awesome. Very exciting.
Yeah, thanks. And just to kind of tell you a little bit about me, I'm a marketer, as I mentioned, started in PR, moved to digital marketing, then did product marketing, worked for Microsoft, worked for Google, worked for startups, and I kind of been able to go in 15 years from an individual contributor to a VP, which was my dream, with what I wanted to do, and was promoted about 10 times during those 15 years.
Wow.
And this is kind of the reason I actually started writing a book, which, kind of side note, I have two passions. Marketing is one and personal development is the other. And I try to figure out how I can marry them and help more people find, fulfillment and be happy in their career. So I figured, if I could do it, anyone else could do it. And that's basically the book Invaluable, how to become the best possible employee and kind of get what you want out of your career. But today we're going to be super tactical, so we can just dive into it and get started. And by the way, if you have questions throughout, feel free to ask them. I'm happy to have a conversation. So the first step to starting to plan your career roadmap is to actually understand where you are right now. So you want to kind of evaluate where you stand, and you want to start thinking about what you want to do next. And it's very possible that you know exactly what comes next. Maybe you're in a role where there's a very clear career roadmap. There's a ladder that you want to climb. Perfect. Then you know what the next move is. Maybe you saw your manager do it. Maybe you saw colleagues, and you're happy to move to the next step. That's amazing, by the way. If you know that, it's going to save you a whole chapter. But if you're not sure, if maybe you're thinking about trying out new things, or maybe you're curious. For me, for example, I worked early in my career in a PR agency. And I did that for almost 4.5 years. And I loved it. But doing PR and interacting with other marketers got me thinking about, what else is there to marketing? Can I do more than PR? And I got so curious that I just started experimenting and thinking about it. And then I decided to move to a role that had nothing to do with PR. I did digital marketing, and I went from an agency to work, for a big company. So it's really about what you want to do and what gets you excited. Now, if you're not sure, like me, I usually need to put things in writing to actually figure out what I'm thinking. So you can just do a really simple exercise. Take a piece of paper, or if you're super digital, just do it on the computer, and divide the page into 2 sections. The one is going to be everything that you love about your work, everything you enjoy doing, everything you want to do more of. The other side is going to be everything you hate, everything you never want to do again, if you're lucky. Now, there's a little caveat, because no matter how senior you are, you're still going to do things you don't necessarily love, but it's going to be a very small portion of your day-to-day. So try to focus on the things that get you excited. For me, for example, I really liked working with people. So for me, leadership was always a big part of what I love. And it was something I really try to make sure I have in every role that I had throughout my career. And if you have a few ideas on things that, you're curious about, you're excited about, maybe you never tried it. Maybe, you never did product marketing, but you think it's interesting. Then write it down. Take a day off, clear your mind, come back, look at the list again. And if you're happy with it, just look at the side of everything that you like and try to figure out if you can turn that into a role. All of the different things you wrote down, do they actually complete a specific role that you can look into? And if you don't really know, here's a really quick tip. Start looking for job descriptions, okay? Let's say you think it could be product marketing, it could be content marketing, you're not sure. Look at job descriptions. It's gonna help you figure out, what might be the best way to kind of bring your dreaming to life. It just gives you, a few ideas. And maybe it will teach you something new. Maybe you'll come across a role you never thought existed, but it actually embodies everything that you want to do. Another thing you should probably look into, once you kind of think you have a direction, let's say you have 1 or 2 roles in mind that you think you're going to do next, go to LinkedIn and find people who are actually doing that role right now. And this is probably the most important part of this entire exercise, because you want to understand what that role looks like in real life. Because reading a job description is nice, but it doesn't really help you understand what happens every day when you come to the office. And it's super important to reach out to a few of these people and just ask them, what do you do every day? What does it look like? If I wanted to have your job, what kind of skills do I need to develop? What is the most important thing that you had to develop to get here? And it's going to give you just amazing insights. 1, into what it actually takes, and 2, it's going to help you figure out if you actually want to do this role. And I know it's the hardest thing to do, reaching out to people, sending out like cold emails or cold LinkedIn messages. It's the hardest thing to do, I know, but let me tell you a secret. Most people really enjoy talking about themselves. So if you just reach out and tell them, I'm really impressed with your background. I am actually thinking about, taking a similar route. Can you just tell me a little bit about your career path? I think 8 out of 10 people I reach out to say yes, not a problem. And I actually share a few specific templates on how to reach out to people on LinkedIn. It's in the toolkit that we'll share after this session. So yeah, I think that's kind of, how you can approach figuring out the next step.
So Maya, for somebody like myself, I get distracted all the time when I think of like job careers or what I want to do in my life. Like I feel like I'm like a little kid at the amusement park. I want to go do this. I want to do that. I want to be a product marketing manager. I want to be a product manager, right? I'd like all these different type of styles. Do you have any recommendations on kind of like try before you buy? I think the feedback about talking to professionals is awesome. Is there any, have you seen anything that gives people the ability to kind of dive a little bit of a deeper dive before they kind of make a large jump in a complete career change?
Yeah, so I think there are a few things you can do. 1, you can figure it out kind of yourself. So let's say you talked about, doing more of product marketing, then start researching product marketing, join the Product Marketing Alliance, join different groups, start talking to people on a daily basis, not just like an interview, and try to get a better sense of what product marketing means. And that's something you can do on your own. But to be honest, I mean, it's great, but it's only going to take you so far. The next thing you can do is you can offer to do work for free. So any of those people you reached out to on LinkedIn, you can tell them, look, I would really love to get a little bit more experience. I'm trying to figure out if this is the right thing for me. Is there anything I can do for you for free? Just a small project or task And you can give me feedback so I know if I did a good job. That's one thing you can do. Or again, if you don't, for some reason, have that opportunity, no one wants you to do work for free, which, you know,
It's
doesn't
never
make
the
sense to
case.
me. It never happens. People will always say yes, but let's say you don't. Then you can actually create a task for yourself. So let's say, you know, you choose a company. I'm, for example, very excited about Drift right now. So I will look at Drift and I would say, okay, if I was the product marketing manager, what would be my biggest challenge right now? And let's say I decide it's sales enablement. Okay, great. I go ahead and I create what I think is the best version of sales enablement. It doesn't matter, I don't have all the internal information. It's fine to use what you have externally. And then you want to try and reach out either to people in some of the groups you joined, or if you can, to someone at the company and just say, hey, I put this together. You know I don't work for you, but would you mind just giving me feedback? I just want to know if I'm kind of going in the right direction. And it's a little bit scary because you do a lot of work and you don't know what the result is going to be. But that's exactly what's going to happen when you move into a new role. So why not do it before you have the risk of, you know, performing poorly at your job? And last but not least, if you have the opportunity to take on more responsibility at your current job, that's the best way to get experience you don't have and to kind of experiment with different things. So for me, early in my career, I was actually a travel agent. I wasn't in marketing, but I started, you know, getting excited. I saw different things and I thought marketing is going to be the thing for me. So I just went, you know, to the CEO of the company and I said, hey, I know I'm a travel agent, but I'm really passionate about marketing. Would you mind if I volunteer to manage all of the social media channels? I'll do it like on my own free time. I'll make sure it doesn't interrupt, you know, my day-to-day work. I just want to experiment with it. And I started doing that. And after a couple of months, I actually took on a marketing role full time because it made sense. So if you can do it internally with the company you work with, it's probably the best way.
That's amazing. I can say anecdotally from being on the other side, having people come and offer like services or saying that they want to learn a job role or job position. I hired both the people like
Yep.
that came to my mind that basically reached out on LinkedIn. They're like, we were doing some voice stuff for a little while and they said, I want to experiment in voice. I want to build something of interest. Can I come and work with you for a time period for like a month on an experiment with you? And I was like, yes, let's do it. And both of those people I hired and worked with.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I've also done the same thing from the other side and even gotten it farther where you meet someone with a lot of prestige. You say like, what's your passion project that you want to work on you don't have time for? Teach me for an hour or two how you would do that. And I'll go away and spend 20 hours actually doing it. So
Wow.
that's kind of the sale of like how you get them upfront to actually tell you how it's done is make it their passion and tell them what you're going to do after they invest in you.
Yeah, I love that. And the fact that you can kind of come back and get feedback, that's the best thing you can do. Because if you build something in a vacuum, you don't know if you did the right thing.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay, so I mentioned before that I actually have a template on how to reach out to, you know, whether it's experts or people in the industry that you want to get to know a little bit better so you can figure out if you like the role that you want to do next. So just super simple tips here because, you know, I sometimes get messages on LinkedIn and I'm like, did you not think for like 2 seconds before sending this? It, you know, it could have been so much different if, you know, it was just personalized. If I felt like I mattered, not you. So just a couple of super simple tips. When you actually reach out to someone, you want to make sure it's about them, not you. So when you start a conversation, you know, you can introduce yourself, that's great, but then just ask them, you know, can you walk me through your career journey? And just let them talk. People really enjoy talking about themselves. So a lot of different things are going to come out and you just need to guide them a little bit to get the information that you want. Okay. Because you definitely want to know how they actually got to the current role they're in. Maybe there's something in there that's going to help you understand, you know, what to leverage in your current role so you can get there. Maybe there's a skill you need to learn. So you really want to go, a little bit deeper there. You want to figure out, what a day-to-day look like. I have to tell you, for the longest time, I thought that doing demand generation is the best thing in the world. And then I talk to people who do demand generation and what their day-to-day look like and how many times they have to look at Excels and how many times they have to optimize algorithms and numbers. And I was like, hell no. I mean, it's important and it's great, but it's not what gets me excited. It looked really interesting on the outside, but once I heard a little bit more about it, I was like, I am not doing that. I need to find something else. So I think those conversations are super important. Take a few notes, try to figure out, does this work for you or not? And then you're going to be ready for the next step. And this is kind of challenging because it's about you ranking yourself. And you have to be really, really honest. You can't lie. No one's going to see these numbers. This is just for you. So what happens is you have this conversation, you look at job descriptions, and you put together a list of everything that it's going to take to get to the next role. Let's say that I want to get into product marketing and I've never done product marketing before. So now I have a list. I need to understand positioning. I need to know how to develop a go-to-market plan, for example. I need to understand sales enablement. And then I have to look at that list and start ranking myself. Do I know how to do all of these things? And you have to be, again, super honest. But once you do that, it's going to make it really easy for you to understand where you have a gap and where you're doing pretty well and you don't have to invest more time into it. And when you do that, this is how you start building a plan, because if you identify, let's say, 3 or 4 things that you don't know how to do, skills that you don't have, experience that you haven't gained, now you can go out and actually get that experience. But you have to be very specific, because if you just say, oh, I need to learn product marketing, you're going to waste a ton of time on just reading random articles, and it's not going to help you get the experience you actually need. You have to be very, very specific, and you have to be, again, really honest. It's really easy to tell yourself, oh, I know how to do that, when you don't.
So when you say you have to be very specific, how do you know for the future role what the specific thing is? Like, I went and read a 700-page book on UX design, and it was a waste of time because I didn't need most of it. But I wouldn't have known beforehand which 2 chapters would actually help me the most.
So I think job descriptions, if you read 10 or 15 of them, not 2, I think it's going to make it a lot clearer where to focus, because most of these roles are going to focus on the same, like 3-4 things. And talking to people who are doing this specific role right now and asking them, what is the most important thing? What didn't you have before you got this role? If I'm going to try and learn more about UX, what should I focus on? Just ask them. And I think this is kind of why I wanted to start with a discovery, get all that information. What I actually suggest in the toolkit is rank the different requirements based on how important they are for the role. So how important it is for UX. Do you need to be a leader to do UX? Maybe not, unless you're going for a senior role. So start with the most important things, rank yourself, and then anything you rank below an 8 is something you need to pay attention to. But you're going to start where you rank the lowest. So if you have 0 experience in something, you definitely have to start there.
Gotcha. My next question was going to be where you go to find this stuff, but you're saying, like, you're not the expert on what you need to ask. Go ask the person with the actual job, what articles do you read every day? What LinkedIn people do you follow? And then learn the same way that they're learning. Yeah,
learn the same way they're learning. But also just ask them what it takes to do what they do. My kind of end goal was always to be the CMO of a startup. And I got to the VP role, but I still have one more step to take. So I started talking to people who are CMOs right now. And I asked them, what are the 5 most important skills you have that allow you to do your job right now? And I got great responses from people. Some things I didn't really think about. I thought, leadership was the most important thing. You need to know how to manage people. And I've done that. But most of them didn't really talk about that. They looked at different things. They talked about thinking strategically. They talked about understanding the business, things that I wouldn't necessarily put at the top of my list, which is why it is so important to talk to people who are actually doing the job and talk to more than one or two people. You need to see a trend. You can't just make assumptions based on just one person because it can be misleading.
Gotcha.
Cool. Okie dokie. Okay, so now for the fun part. How do you actually get this experience, okay? And I know people find it a little bit challenging because it requires a lot of self-motivation because you're gonna have to make yourself do all of these things. But it's not as hard as you think, I promise. So there are a few things you can do. First and foremost, you can just figure it out on your own. So like you said, you read a book, and sometimes it's enough. Sometimes for some topics, reading a book, reading articles, if you need to learn how to operate a specific software, you can just download it, play with it, you can figure out, how to use it. You can follow influencers like you mentioned before. For me, that has been probably one of the best forms of learning. Following people who've done what I want to do. So don't follow people who just say what you want to hear. Follow people who actually did what you want to do because they can share, real experiences. You can join different communities, just like this one, so you can learn from other people. You can go a little bit deeper in terms of research. Yeah, you want to ask a question?
I was just curious why I was muted.
Oh, okay. Listening to podcasts, that's actually also something I've been doing a lot more in the last couple of years because it comes with real experience. When you have interviews from people in the industry you want to get into or in the profession you want to get into, you can learn from real experiences as opposed to just reading something very general. So you can do a lot of that on your own. And like I mentioned, you can volunteer to work for free for someone. It's actually one of the best ways.
So I actually do have a question. So when you're at the beginning of your career, a lot of these are really helpful because you need certain hard skill sets to do your job. But when you're at the point where you're at, where you're, reaching the top of the echelon, like a lot of CEOs, CMOs, C-suite people don't really need like these hard skills anymore so much. They need to be creative and think about things that people have never thought about before so they can execute strategies that give them an advantage because they've never been done before. So what resources do you look at to train yourself to do that when it's not learning something, it's more learning how to be creative and see what people don't see?
Yeah. That's a whole different story, and I actually have a whole chapter in the book about this, and the way I refer to it is lateral thinking. So having enough different experiences in your life and having different resources, whether it's from what you do for a living or from everything you do outside of work, from the people you meet, from the conversations you have, that really help you get that creativity and connect dots that sometimes other people don't see. I will say to this day, I still have what I call a growth machine, which is basically me creating an automated funnel where all the information I need comes to me. So I'm very lazy when it comes to learning. No one wants to actually learn. The word learning is problematic in general because we think about school and something we were forced to do. But we are, human beings. We are an adaptation machine. We're supposed to learn all the time. So the way that I kind of hacked it is I did the research. I found like the influencers I like, the blogs that have the best information, and I just make sure it all comes to me. So I sign up to newsletters. I'm very particular about that. I only have 10 newsletters at every specific time coming into my inbox. I only follow a small amount of people, but I create this echo chamber where all the information comes to me. So I don't actually need to work. I have 1 hour a week on my calendar where I go through all the newsletters and I read the content. Because if I had to start looking for something every day, it will never happen. And I still have that. I don't think it matters how senior you are. I think you still need to be up to date. You always need to know what's happening. There's always something new. And you don't necessarily just have to follow, like as a marketer, I don't just follow content around marketing. I also learn a lot about leadership. I also learn about business. So I, follow different CEOs because I want to see how they make decisions. So I think that is still valid. But when it comes to the soft skills, it's going to be a very different process. And it's going to have a lot to do with just developing kind of the mental approach you have to learning and what you do. So you're going to do something similar in terms of finding ways to get the information. It just wouldn't be, necessarily the same way. So you won't just reach out to other CMOs and ask what they do, although again, I did that recently and I think it's good. I think it's more about actually building those skills internally first, and then slowly kind of trying to it's just harder to create like a project for something very strategic, as opposed to creating a document, writing a blog post, and so forth.
I totally
I'll
hear
have to
that.
think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's a complicated problem, you can't just have like a simple landing page, right? The more complicated the problem, the more strategy, the more thoughtfulness that you have to apply. That's totally get that. This list is incredible, Maya. Like I really think that you're really like focusing in and filtering in on exactly like a good plan to push forward and do that. In your own career, how did you like decide kind of the path that you took, or what was there any kind of like indications of like, okay, when is it not working for you? Like how do you like decide that, or what your internal mechanisms, or what do you recommend when you feel like it's not working for you, or this isn't actually my dream career path?
Yeah. So for me, I guess the best indicators were not being happy, and not just for a day or two. As I said, sometimes you have rough patches, sometimes you have to work, harder than you expected, and that's perfectly fine. Things are supposed to be difficult. But if I see that happening for a really long period of time, let's say 6 months, and I'm not happy. I don't like getting up in the morning and going to work every single day. That's a problem. And then I start asking myself, okay, but why? Is it the role itself? Am I not fulfilled in what I do? Am I not enjoying it? Or, are there any other external reasons? And if it's the role, what I've actually done throughout my career is reach out to my manager and say, hey, I've been doing this for a while. I think I've been doing a good job. I'll be happy to get feedback, but I think I can do more. Here are 3 things that I would like to do in addition to what I'm doing right now. I have the capacity. I know I can do it. It will help me, feel a little bit more fulfilled in my day-to-day. And I did that pretty much in every role that I had. So every time I started a job, the job description was, one thing. And by the time I left, it was 3 times what I started with, because I needed that, engagement and motivation. And if you can't have that for any reason, if you can't expand your role and you feel like you're not growing, for me, that's a sign that I need to move on.
It's a great response. I think a lot of us have done similar things where we see an opportunity inside a company that we're passionate about, and like you said, just do it in your free time, and then it becomes your job, and then you move on from that company with a new job title, which was not the job title you came in with, but the job title you wanted, and then the next company thinks you're an expert.
Yeah, and this is funny, but you're going to see that on the next page. This is probably the best way to develop, skills that you don't have. But just one thing here about show and don't tell. We talked about creating a project before, but I actually wanted to tell a story from, more recently in my career. Even though I'm looking for, those VP roles, I spoke to a company I was really passionate about. And for some reason, after 2 interviews, they were like, we don't think you're the right choice for this role. But I felt like I felt like they didn't really get who I am and what I can do. So I went back and I built what I assumed they would ask me to do if I moved, to the next step. I built a marketing strategy for their company. I didn't go all crazy, like, 20 slides. I did it, in a very focused way, 4 slides, focusing on what I thought mattered. And I sent it to them and I said, hey, I know you said no. This is perfectly fine, but I have a feeling, maybe you didn't realize what I can do. So take a look at this. If you like it, let's continue the conversation. If you don't, no harm done. And they got back to me 3 days later. I went on an on-site, we continued the conversation. It didn't work out at the end, but I made it all the way to be a final candidate because I took the time to actually showcase what I can do. And it helped me because, I now have one more strategy in my portfolio that I can use as an example. And I learned through the process.
That's awesome.
This is kind of my kind of layup question. Do you regret doing that or putting the
Not
time
at
in?
all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because, I can't get every job I apply to. No one can. Okay. So it was perfectly fine. And I enjoyed doing it. I felt like, to be honest, I felt like I had to do it. There was no option in my mind of me not doing it because I did not want to miss that opportunity. I cared about that company that much.
It's amazing.
So yeah. Okay.
I personally struggle with that debate sometime about kind of so I fortunately have fortunately or unfortunately have multiple roles across a couple different companies and it's good for me. But I still want to learn more and like invest time into growing in certain aspects, but I don't know when it's the right mix. And I guess it comes from wisdom, but do you recommend a right mix of like experimenting for the new or kind of doubling down on the career that you currently have or the tasks that you currently have? Do you have your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, when I start a new role, and I usually try to optimize for roles where it will be a bit of a stretch. I never take on a role where I'm like 100% qualified for. I aim for the 70, 80%. So the first 6 months are usually dedicated to just learning that role, gaining all the skills that I need, and really kind of figuring out how to do that and do that well. And when I feel confident enough, this is when I start thinking about, okay, within, the capacity I have right now, what else can I do? And you also need that time to see other teams, to understand how the business works, to find those opportunities, because you can't, from day one, you can't identify what's missing. You want to do some work and then you're going to see some gaps where you can maybe offer, to do a little bit more and gain that experience. Yeah, and this is actually, what we're talking about here. So your current job is the best way to get experience for your next role. And it doesn't matter if it's with the same company or if you're going to go somewhere else. And it is so simple, but most of us just don't think about it. We just do our job. And if you're intentional and if you sit down just once for 2 hours and you ask yourself, okay, what are the skills I need to gain? I need to learn more about leadership. Great. How can I get, leadership experience? I'm not a manager right now, but hey, I can volunteer and maybe mentor someone who's even more junior than me. And it doesn't even have to be within your team. You can do it, with a different team. Or I can create a project that involves a few different teams. If you can be the person who brings other teams together, that's leadership. And again, it doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't have to build a new product. You just have to think about something small where your experience can actually be beneficial.
Okay, here's a question that I toy with. Find the right company or find the right job position from the different job platforms. Like, in your opinion, do you go after the team and the company that you want to work for, or do you recommend going for like different job platforms and open positions? And what are your thoughts around that?
I would say it has to be a combination. So I found for me that if I'm passionate about what I do, if I like the company, if I like the product, if I believe in what they're doing, I would do my job 10 times better, because I would get myself to learn more about the industry because I want to. I have the motivation. I will be a lot more inclined to do the work. So one of the big no-nos for me, I will never work for a company whose product I would never use. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I want to get excited. So it's definitely not any job or any company. On the other hand, you need good people. The fact that the product is great is one thing, but if your team sucks, you're going to be miserable every single day. So for me, I try to optimize, mostly for whoever is the hiring manager. I want to have someone that I feel, we kind of click, we see things, in the same way, we have that vibe during our first conversations. It's someone I can look up to, someone I appreciate, who, even in earlier conversations, I could see myself learning from them. For me, that's really important. And hopefully you can also get a team that is great, but most of the interactions are going to be with your manager. So that's something I would optimize for.
Makes a lot of sense, because if you like them, they'll hire people that you like. My question is, you said that you always go for a role that you learn something new. It's what you want to learn. When you're doing internal mentorship and you are mentoring someone, do you ever impress upon them, hey, maybe your job could be something that you like more, and point them that right direction, even if it's not actually what you need them to do, so that they like their company more and they work harder for you?
Yes, I'm guilty of that, because I honestly think that anyone can have a fulfilling job and they can enjoy what they're doing. And if that person is happy with what they're doing, I might kind of play with the idea, but I won't force them to go that way. But if I see them getting excited, if they ask questions, then yeah, 100%. When I worked as the VP of marketing for Kolu, I had an employee and she was in customer support, but she really wanted to learn how to code. I don't know why. She thought it was going to be helpful. She wanted to experiment with that part of her career. So I sponsored an online course for her. I was like, of course, go do that, learn. And you know what? She actually used it to create a process for customer support, an automation process we never thought about. So she actually kind of took that experience and applied it to the company. So yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone to kind of explore what they want to do more of.
Nice. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If it's what you want, it's what they want. And if you both see each other working toward similar goals of getting what you want, then you have the same mindset and you trust each other more, and everyone wins.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is what I think, but not necessarily everyone else. A few more things you can do. You can talk to your manager directly and say, hey, what keeps you up at night? What can I do for you? I've done that a lot throughout my career. And the important part here is to know when to say no. Because if someone is just going to throw their dirty work on you and you're not going to learn anything new, you probably want to try and avoid that in a very nice way. But if you have the opportunity to do something new, then definitely take on a little bit more work, for a week or two, have a little bit more pressure, but you're going to learn something completely new and you're going to have that experience. Mentorship, obviously, internally, helping other people.
Uh-oh.
Frozen.
So I think this is amazing, and as when Maya like pops back on, we'll continue to talk. Like, Ross, I don't know about you, but like myself, when I started a company like 10 or 12 years ago, I didn't have any of this information, and my solution was literally to hit the eject button and then do the stuff that I wanted to work on at a company that I created. It wasn't actually because I didn't have these tools or these tips or tricks.
I had these tools, and
Yeah.
the interesting thing that I always found was finding a great mentor at a company where you don't work helped me a lot more than finding a mentor at a company where you do work. Because as soon as you're working for them, they no longer see you really as like a mentee. They see you as kind of just okay, now you're here, do your job. So it'd be interesting to apply Maya's ideas in that capacity, because they were never really applied to me in that capacity. Where it happened, where I didn't work at a company, they mentored me great. I worked at the company and the dynamic kind of changed. And then I had to go get a mentor at a new company. But also the greatest thing that ever changed my career was having a guy, like I was working at a project, ready to quit it. I said, I'm quitting today. I went to him and he said, cool, like you come work for me for a month for free and I'll teach you everything you need to know about getting any job you want, whether or not you're qualified for it. And after a month, we'll get you that job. And he applied these same exact principles. He was like, show me 3 jobs on LinkedIn you want, whether or not you're qualified for them. Cool. We're going to reach out to one of these people and we're going to get a really cheap contract doing this work for them. You're going to work 16 hours a day to work for them 8 hours a day. The definition of an expert is just someone who knows more than you. So as long as you know more than these people, you'll be able to help them. And then after a month of learning 16 hours a day, you get hired because you've shown that you're passionate about it and it's exactly what you wanted to do. She's back. Hello.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I got so excited. I didn't realize I wasn't plugged in, so my computer basically died.
So Maya, we were just talking about how like 10 or 12 years ago, like not having this toolkit, not having these tips and tricks, my solution was to exit companies and start my own startup just because I wasn't getting the experiences that I wanted to get. And like, if I had this plan in place 10, 12 years ago, I don't even know if I would have started a company then.
Well, first of all, if you like what you do, then it's great that you got to start a company. This is kind of funny because when people ask me about the book, I say, look, there's so much advice about how to start a business because it's like the ultimate goal. You're going to be free. You're going to control your own life. You're going to make more money. And I'm
absolutely not. No.
I know. And look,
No.
I'm married to an entrepreneur. I know what it's like to start businesses. We're at business number 4, and it's great for him. It's not what I want. I like having a paycheck at the end, of every other week. I like being employed, and no one talks about that. Like you can just focus on being really great employee, and that's fine. If this is your choice, if this is what makes you happy, great. No need to apologize. We don't all need to build businesses and, be independent. This is exactly what I'm saying. You can find joy and you can feel that almost freedom if you do something that you love every day.
I think it's really funny. I have friends who only ever worked in startups and then they went and worked at a company and I'm like, so what are you doing now? And they're like, I work at this huge company. I actually love it. I had never tried it before, but I actually love it way more than startup world. I just had never actually expanded beyond thinking I wanted to run my own company. So.
Yeah, and you know what? Like you said before, you can experiment. And when you choose the next step in your career, maybe you go to a bigger company, maybe you go to a startup. Just kind of look into, what you're curious about. Talk to people who've done that. People who work for startups will, share different experiences than someone who works for Google, trust me. So just, try it out. When you reach out to people, speak to people in industries that you're interested in and you think about maybe going into.
For sure. The most interesting person I ever talked to says that he does a 6-year program where every 6 years he works for a startup and every 6 years he works for a company. And typically he works for the startup until it sells. So he was actually working at a big company because his startup sold after 2 years or something. But it was just very interesting to hear, like, he's like, I love both of these worlds. And so this is my plan for my life. So I don't get overwhelmed and constantly think I want to leave one for the other. Like it's set in stone what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. I actually had a similar experience. So I worked for Fortune 500s and I worked for really small companies. And, at a different time in my career, the bigger companies were great. But now I feel like I can make more of an impact if I work for a smaller company. And I want to have more autonomy to do things, especially as I kind of hit, the more senior roles. I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I want to be the one making the decisions. And I know it's going to be easier with a smaller company. So that's my choice. But, different seasons call for different, companies.
For sure.
I have a little, do we still have enough time? I have a little.
We have a little time. So
we can have we're close to the end. Just wanted to share something with you. Shared it on LinkedIn and I think people kind of like it because it talks about creating your own opportunities, but it came from a place of, figuring out how I can get more experience. And the first time I became a manager, it was kind of by mistake. And the story behind it, I was working for the PR agency, and I saw that we were having some problems because when I joined, we were 5 people, and then we doubled. We were 10 people, but we didn't have any managers. The CEO was really focused on bringing in more clients, and everyone were just doing whatever they wanted, the wild, wild west, in a way. And it really bothered me because I was really proud of what we were doing. I knew that we were, giving really great services, but we weren't really doing it at that time. So I had what I like to call a Jerry Maguire moment. And anyone who's too young to know what Jerry Maguire is, which, okay, never mind. It's this moment where you have this aha, epiphany, and you're like, I'm going to solve this problem. There's a better way to do it. And I decided to come up with a plan. It was so simple. It was like 2 pages, and it basically said, we need managers, we need hierarchy, we need processes, and we need templates. Because right now, it's, everyone are doing whatever the hell they want. I showed it to my boss because I just thought, I'm going to give it to you and you're going to fix this problem. But instead, he said, you know what? Great plan. Go and do that. You're the new manager. Go manage the team. Figure out how to do all of this, which was pretty exciting. And, it all started because I was like, something isn't working out right now. It's going to help me get more experience if I kind of solve this problem. So I put together a plan, and then it ended up being a career opportunity where I actually get promoted, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. It's pretty cool that you saw it and it became true.
Yeah, I have this thing where I can't look away. So even more recently, I did some consulting for Google, and I was hired to do marketing strategy. But I was working with a team, and I noticed that they had some internal communication problems. So the management and the employees, they weren't really talking to one another. So what was happening at the top, which I had access to, didn't really trickle down. So instead of just kind of saying, not my job, I reached out to the hiring manager and I said, hey, you have this problem with communications. Here are 5 things I think you should start implementing tomorrow, and it's going to make your life easier. And he did. But I can't look away.
Right. But that's really interesting that you said that, because the question in my head is like, how is that not overstepping bounds or making people feel bad? But it's like, frame it as, this will make your life easier. These are just the suggestions that I've seen. Like, this is going to work for you.
Yeah, the delivery is everything. You can't, make people feel bad. So being a storyteller is actually really important. No matter what you do in your career, even if you're not a marketer, you need to understand how to make it about, the other person. So it's not, hey, you're a terrible manager, your team is not, collaborating, but rather, hey, I think there's a way to make this collaboration even better. I think you're going to get so much out of it. And, here's how I would implement it. I didn't just want to throw a problem at them. I wanted to give a solution. And it worked. It worked really well. We executed it, in the next couple of weeks, and it really made a huge difference.
It's a very how to win friends and influence people Carnegie answer, where it's, give them the solution and say, here's my solution. It's going to make your life easier. You can take credit for it. So if you implement
100%.
it, you can have the credit. And you're going to look like a rock star. Like, I'm just a little birdie who whispered in your ear. So.
Yeah. And it never hurts if you can connect it to business results. I mean, not in this specific case, but other things I worked on and I really needed to get, buy-in, then I would show what the effect would be on the bottom line and, the main goal that they were trying to achieve.
For sure. Maya, it's been an awesome presentation all about marketing yourself, the perfect marketing career, like conversations with people that some people are afraid to have, but they should not be, because everyone wants to talk about themselves and they're willing to help you if you are willing to help them. And part of helping them is just the emotional support of being interested in their career. If people want to learn more about this, I know you're going to share your deck. You have some other resources on LinkedIn. Where else can people find you, connect with you? Do you mentor other people? And yeah, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so just going to the website, mayagrossman.com, you'll find almost everything in there, links to videos, resources, anything else you want to learn. And if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, I usually talk to everyone, and I do engage in some mentoring right now. I might be close to capacity, but if, if one conversation can make a difference, then I'm happy to help.
How do you choose your mentors? Are they people that you see are really passionate about what they want to do and so you want to help them? Are they people that are going the same direction as you and so it helps you learn as you're helping them?
Honestly, I find it very hard to say no, at least at this point. I usually just have a conversation, and if it's clear to me that they're open to learn more, sometimes people just want an answer. They want me to say, this is what you need to do, and I never hear from them. But if they're open to learn more, and if I can see progress, then it usually turns into a relationship. And I have a few people, throughout the years that I've been working with.
That makes a lot of sense. And that kind of gets back to they're passionate, they're motivated. But it sounds like at the moment what you're saying is they find you.
Right now, yeah. I
Gotcha.
mean, it's been a very long career. So I'm very lucky to have people kind of sometimes look at my LinkedIn like, hey, we really like pretty much what I mentioned before. We really like, your career path. Can you talk us through it? Can you teach us a little bit, why you made decisions? And as I said, people like talking about themselves, and me included. So I'm happy to have those first conversations.
For sure. You said you have lots of resources on LinkedIn. One question that I always just love to ask though is like, what is the go-to place that you go to so that you stay up to date? You say you have those 10 newsletters coming in. Is there one that stands out, or is there a resource that stands out that you think is really well curated and everyone should look into just because it'll keep them ahead of the curve?
Right now, because my focus is product marketing, so I read a lot of what the Product Marketing Alliance team puts through. But I'm also looking a lot into leadership, so reading different books. And if there's one thing I can recommend that everyone does, and I know it's going to be annoying because it's a book and it's long, but if for some reason someone haven't read Mindset, please do that. It's going to change your life, and it's going to give you a better perspective for everything that you do, not just for your career.
Can you give a one sentence description of what Mindset's going to teach you?
Yes, it's going to make it very clear that you can learn anything you want to learn in life. Talent is not something you are born with, it's something that you develop. And it's going to show you how it can affect every aspect of your life. That belief that you can do anything you set up to do. And I'm probably one of the best examples of how I went from not even thinking about it to executing my 10-year plan in 6 years.
That sounds like a great mindset that everybody should have.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to wrap up here. Thank you for everyone for coming. Maya, thanks again for all of your great information. Oh, I actually do have one last question, which is just,
Yeah.
it sounds like you already do this and you reach out to everyone you want to, but if you could have anyone come on this show and you could be in the audience asking them questions, who would you want to see?
A marketer that I really, really look up to, his name is Udi Ledergor, and he's the CMO at Gong. I know Udi a little bit, but I want to really dig into his work and ask questions about how he got Gong to where they are today.
Gotcha. We'll reach out and see if that can happen.
Cool.
Awesome. So thank you, Maya, so much for your great presentation. We'll put the slides up afterwards. I will attest that I have used a third of these strategies because I knew about them. I didn't know about the other 2/3, and I'm excited to look into them. And I hope that everyone in the audience can also take something away. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Pleasure to be here.
Likewise. See everyone tomorrow on the next Masters of Marketing. See you,
Thank
Maya.
you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.